Mitch's design is actually a good example to demonstrate how you could create an object out of vertical surfaces and then actually cap it with horizontal surfaces. We see those are all hard edges. That basically means all we need to do is trace those hard edges, extrude them out along the x-axis and along kind of like the z-axis, create surfaces, and then trim everything. So I start this one by creating myself a new layer and go to my CV, and I keep 7 as default because in some situations I might need pretty long curves. So here now I try to see if maybe how many CVs I might need to sketch a certain shape. So here probably, yeah, I still need 4. Okay, then let's go back. And you see certain corners have roundings. Those I try specifically here to ignore. So for example, my next curve I create while snapping onto the curve by pressing Ctrl Alt, click down here, third one, and leave one here. I might have to adjust those CVs a little bit. Maybe pull this one down a notch. There. Okay. Let's take a look at this section. So, CV, Control Alt, snap to the endpoint. 1, 2, 3. I need for this corner 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, let's see if this actually will work. Then I have to rearrange some of these points a little bit. Maybe here I have to tighten them a little bit closer together. And for example, those 2 CVs, see I selected both from each curve. I move to a point where it feels like the sharp edge of those 2 curves actually would be. Okay, and let's go ahead, try to adjust those points a little bit. And maybe this one we move down. Yeah, maybe like this. I have the feeling I might need another point there, but I just keep it at this for the moment. Okay. Then let's go to here and create a curve here. 1, 2 for this arc. Snap along this curve. 1 and 2. And on purpose I stop there because I see this curve makes a blend into this curve. So here I'm creating myself another curve. Snap to this edge. There and there. Let's move this one out slightly. Okay, and then here actually for that transition I could, for example, create a new curve, or maybe in this case I'm going to use a blend curve. I want, yeah, degree 5, G2, okay. And then click and drag on the surface till the endpoint, click on the next curve and drag to the endpoint, and there we are. And then, for example, now I can adjust those endpoints, and you see it adjust then this blend curve for me. But you have to be careful with how much you deform points. you see can get some kind of awkward looking shapes. This is pretty much the same as having the degree 5 curve and then making it align. The end result would be the same. But the advantage of the blend curve, it spaces out the points nicely and even. Okay, so for example down here, I have a looks like a sharp point, but I assume this all should be nice and round. So here, for example, whoops, I'm going to create myself a degree 5 curve, spacebar, and then go to align, G2. And then, for example, I can push those out. Okay. So for this curve, I turn off the CVs because I only want to be able to modify the CV of this curve. Okay, good. So, and then basically I have to continue the steps down here as well. I will do the first one and then pause the video. Here I have a sharp edge, so Control Alt click 1 and 2. Control Alt click the next one. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this has to flow into there. So I make 1 point there. And I'm going to adjust those CVs. There and there. And yeah, so I have to see if maybe to there and to there. Then this should, for example, maybe be a degree 3 because I want to have 2 points, except align this line to there. But you see I get this awkward looking shape. It dips down there, so that's not really what I want. And this is already a degree 5. Well, let's change this one to 7, except, and then this point snap along this line. So I just have to sculpt it. Push this one up, and there a little bit. Okay, so you see with the cage I try to have a nice curvature. Let's, for example, turn on the curvature graph. So the main reason to do this right now is if I push this one down, you see how this arcs and gets tighter here, which is not what I want. So I want to have a nice even flow. There, okay. Oops, will go away. Perfect. Okay, let's select all those. Don't show me the CVs. Okay, and here, for example, we could quickly create something a similar way to there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then let's align this one to this one. This point I could, for example, move to there a little bit. And then I can adjust those CVs. And you see actually that helped me adjusting this curve down here. bring those points closer together. And there. Okay, and then pretty much I do the same with the last part. Another curve. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And snap. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And then this one I push out a little bit. Go to a line U to U. And then go to the CV edit and start sculpting that shape. Okay, so this, for example, was like step 1, how to quickly resculpt everything. And this is again just one possible way. I kept this one sharp. I, with more curves or 2 curves, could have drawn that one as well. So for example, let's do that actually, just simply to be consistent. So I go back, change this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And then from here, starting maybe there, 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I snap, and then there actually, I snap and align this one. Now I have to go down to here, sculpt those. And yeah, I'm pretty close to the same shape, but I just have this part sculpted by hand. And then with this curve, obviously I have to adjust this one and snap it back, kind of like to there. Okay, good. So this was part 1, putting down all the different profile curves. And now in step 2, we're going to extrude surfaces. Now we know that actually all those cap faces we see here are more or less horizontal. So all we need to do is actually select first all those curves. So this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one. And then we can use the surface draft, or kind of like some other programs would call it simply the curve extrude, and extrude the part out as much as we need. And I extrude this one out a little bit thicker than actually necessary. And I will explain the reason for that just in a second. So then I'm going to select all those surfaces, a new layer, surface, assign, let's turn on symmetry. We have to change the symmetry plane there, spacebar, set, perfect. Okay, good. Now, step 2. Let's extrude those curves. And here in this case, this one is going to be a little bit inserted there. Let's take a look. So you see, because this blend curve blends between this curve and this curve, also the surface I got out of it, they all perfectly flow to each other. So that was the main reason for why, for example, here I created a blend curve, because however I designed this curve and this curve affected this curve. Now I can, for example, go ahead and select the next following set of curves. This one, make draft, for example, maybe let's check how much do we have. We have 3. What does 9 look like? Update. 9 is maybe too much. And let's go to 6. Okay, let's go to next. So then I select those curves. And here we go 4. So I'm stepping down the distance, and this one and this one, and 2. Okay, let's take a look what we have. Looks actually pretty nice, and there you see how all these parts now slightly sit on each other. So careful layer up, a careful positioning of all those surfaces really helped. And now we can, for example, go ahead and start rounding certain parts. So here, for example, we have a rounding, and for that, then I can use the surface fillet. Let's go for G2, this edge and this edge. Show me the value. Oh, that's a perfect match. Okay, build next. For example, down here is a small rounding. And this, for example, is way too big. So cure, edit, and let's set this one maybe to 3. And feels kind of close, maybe 2. Yeah, 2 is actually better. Okay, next. This one seems to be a really tiny one. So 1 is way too much. Sorry, 2 is too much, maybe 1. And here, for the moment, I actually I have to keep it for a moment, because if I start rounding this one, I will run into a problem. Because then, let me show you. This one surface starts to float in space. But actually, you know what? I just keep it for the moment this way. So, nope, not this one. I would like to go to here. Let's take a look at the site. Well, I used a 1 here and a 1 there, so I just keep it. Okay. Perfect. Now, this was basically the first step, rounding all those edges. Now, the next step is actually simply putting some planes in there. So we go to this plane tool. Let's move it up. Maybe scale it down a little bit. There. And I'm overbuilding this a little bit. Okay. And let's maybe bring it to there. Okay. This looks decent. And then I go to the intersect and say this surface, spacebar, intersect with this one, this one. Now I have to select all the correct surfaces, all the fragments. And I think this one is missing. Spacebar. Okay, and if we did it correctly, we should now be able to keep the inside? Yes, it did. So you see now I press with Shift, I select the surface and I click in it to mark the part, for example, I want to keep. And say keep, and that should cut out all those parts. Yep, it did. So this is good. Let's save. Now here we have a really sharp edge, so that's not necessarily really super. And also I wanted to show something. We can, for example, be a little bit creative now. See, this is a plane, so if I select this plane and start adding, for example, and not adding, modifying those CVs, you see I'm going to bend, for example, that surface, and then I give a little bit of a nice arc to that part. And for example, I can do even the same, for example, for the top. So there, move those in a little bit there. And here I'm going, nope, I'm going to move those out a little bit. And my problem is I move those further than, for example, that original make draft created the surface. So in this case now I think let's go to Cure Edit, drag this one out further, auto update. Yeah, that's good. So I just really push it out a lot. Next. And it should have updated everything. Unfortunately, it did not. So let's see what's missing here. So all those surfaces are pushed out. Ah, I see the fillets didn't follow it. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to save. I'm pausing this recording. I'm removing the trimming. Or you know what? Actually, yeah, I can just simply show you that how to fix it. So forget what I said. Let's show everything. So trim, untrim. This one is untrimmed. And then I go to, for example, pick, try to clean up my mesh. Selected all those curves on the mesh. Let's hide it. And now I have to see what's going on with those. And you see actually those broke. So it looks like they do not have construction history anymore. Yeah, and the surface fillet, as you can see, actually, I think, yeah, didn't really update the way I wanted. So what I have to do in this case is simply I select all those and delete them. Perfect. And then I, for example, now can go back. So radius of 1 is what we use for the top part here. And I think down there that was a 2. You know what? To make it consistent, I keep it all at 1. Fine. Okay, and then let's show this plane again. This is actually also now easier to work with when you make those parts much bigger. And then I'm finding those intersection curves again. Okay, and then let's go back to trim, keep, and then here I shift select the surface, click in it, and then do a second click and say discard. And interestingly, this one decided to be ignored there. Okay, great. So the nice thing is, and the advantage, this one's going to create later a problem if I'm going to round this edge, because this is a radius of 1. So I might simply have to change this one to something bigger. There's no way around it. So 3. And here maybe a 2. And the main reason for that was simply when I go to surface fillet and now I select this side and then I select in sequence all those. Oh, nope. Let's redo surface fillet this side and then I select all those vertical or perpendicular surfaces. Okay, they all should be highlighted in yellow. They are. Let's open this one, build, and chances are high this actually will not work. So let's set this one to a small radius. There it started to work. Because here the fillet I used for this surface, the radius, is too small for this one to work. See there, now it works. And the main reason is this arc, when I fillet this corner, gets kind of like offset, so it shrinks, so it gets smaller. So this one has to be sufficient big so I could round this edge. So I can either leave it, for example, this way. Okay, let's click next. There's our surface. I could change the surface or I could change the radius. So that's what I'm going to do. Let's give this one a 2. Okay. And then, for example, I can select this one. Yeah. Let's see if a 1 works. See, now a 1 works, but it's still kind of tight there. Okay, let's see if a G2 corner works. It does. Okay. No, I think it does not work. I saw something dotted. Yeah, I was right. So you can see those lines are dashed. That actually means there was a problem. So that radius is too big. Let's make a 0.7. Let's have continuity check on. And there you can see there are still some problems. 0.4. Yeah, it's still working. Yeah, still doesn't really work. So I would have to continue changing those sizes a little bit more, but I think now here with a G1 at least, which is not the most ideal, but at the same time we have very flat surfaces, so in this case here this might be sufficient. So most of those parts work well. Perfect. So I think only down here I spotted there was one problem. Let's see. So those were positional. Are there G1? Yeah, they are. They are. Oh, okay. Never mind. Not sure what I saw there. Okay, perfect. So this process, basically, I can continue also with those parts here. But let me say first, let's create another plane. And for example, I'm going to work on the upper surface, this one here. Let's move those parts. Let's go to the side view. Or from below, move this one out till there. Okay. That sounds good. I mean, sorry, that looks good. And now you see this surface actually sits on there. That's not ideal. That's where I sketched it, but that's not really good. And here, this edge also sits on the surface. Works, but again, not ideal. But what I'm going to do now is actually I extend those edges a little bit. And we can do this with the extend tool. So I click, yeah, and we have to break the construction in this case. And I extend this in a notch, perfect. Let's do the same here, move this one in. Then I want to go to side view and see if this actually, yeah, it goes into my surface. And let's turn symmetry off, turn around, and let's take a look. And here you can clearly see it intersects. And then we can basically continue with the same intersect and trim process, creating, for example, this yellowish capped surface and trimming the access green and magenta part. And also in the inside, for example, trim this cyan area away by, for example, finding where this cyan part cuts with the green and this green and the magenta. And you can, for example, see here are all the intersection curves. And I found those by intersect. And basically I said this surface intersect with here, this surface intersect with kind of like this arced surface. I said this surface intersect with all those three. So for example, this way I got kind of like this curve, which then I can use to say trim and keep the inside. Perfect. Let's go to here. There could go and say trim. One shift and another click and say keep. So this way I only keep the outside and everything here that was growing into the surface which we extended is gone. And for example here in this small area which is included by those green pluses, the green plus also means a perfect possibility for trim. Red means the intersection line stops on a surface, it doesn't cut through a surface. But I want between 1, 2, 3 and 4 green pluses. It's an enclosed surface. I want to cut that out. So here I say discard because I'm using the construction history. This takes a moment. So the rounded filleting, for example, maybe I should have done actually not now. I should have maybe done that later. So actually, because you see this one slows everything down a little bit. So this part I undo. I think this should still work. Yeah, then the fresh up is much faster. So let's bring this one back. Perfect. Okay. Let's take a look at how, for example, we can do the top part. So side view, and let's create a plane there. Scale it down, position it, and maybe here move it to where we want. Maybe in this case, this one I tilt slightly there. Okay, but before we continue, we have the problem of that there is a gap, as you can see. So this surface, I best need to blend into this part. So, oops. Let's see if I can select this part and delete it. Okay. You see actually that here the make draft actually broke. So what I'm going to do in this case is let's turn those profiles on again. Let's go to the make draft. Here, let's drag those out again to where we maybe need them. Spacebar. Okay, and then I'm going to fillet this edge again. Oops, wrong command. Oh, no, 1 second. I think, yeah, there's a duplicate. Let's remove those first. Okay, good. Now we can actually round those two, and I think maybe that was a 4. And let's make it tangent to curvature. Okay, good. So now you see this part actually I did not extrude, but actually in this case now here I could make a surface blend. So I say this edge to this edge, build. Let's take a look. And there we can see it's not necessarily perfect. So let's see if maybe we can help here a little bit by getting this slope back. So let's first change this one. Oh, there it is. So much closer and perfect. So there we can keep it. I had it on tangent, not curvature, because the blend curve was set actually to be curvature. Okay. Now that what we can do is we can either sculpt this part a little bit and then if we want to dome it. And then we can actually do the same with the projection. So here, intersect both surfaces. But before I do that, I also have to do and change something there. So I go back to my profiles. I'm going to clean up my scene here for a moment, push all this onto this area here, and let's go to curve select here. So I snapped to this curve. That was not good. I'm extending it a little bit so that the derived surface overshoots already. Perfect. Okay, so now I can go ahead and say the surface intersect with this one and this one, this one, this one, and this one, and also this one here. And if everything is working right, I should be able now to cut this one. It works perfect. So could also go to here and say keep, 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 and keep. And now here we should be able to say discard. And this is going to be the interesting question. Discard. Oh yeah, it works. Perfect. So this is fantastic. And only, oh, what happened there? So I forgot to maybe intersect those two surfaces there. So let's save. Go to untrim this part. Okay, so intersect single surface on the first one, U, spacebar with U. And let's go back to trim, keep, there it is. And trim, discard. Revert, because that was kind of silly, because I forgot to have this intersection there. There. Okay, intersect, go the surface, spacebar with this one. I needed this line on both parts. There. That is what I'm talking about. Perfect. Okay, so you start seeing like how all these different shells got built up. And again, let's make a proof of concept, because I think most of these parts should maybe at this point still be interactive. And let's move this one a little bit this way. Oh yeah, you see everything's being retrimmed. Nice. Perfect. Okay, and then the only thing that's basically left is, for example, cutting those lower parts. I'm going to pause the video here for a second and then I will be back. So here's the last section. You see I created the plane. I also extended my profiles, the last vertices, so all those surfaces immediately intersect with each other. And now I can go ahead and say intersect this plane with this surface, this, and this surface, nothing, trim, and keep. Worked. And then I could say intersect this surface, spacebar with this one, and say intersect this surface with this one. Okay, trim, and say 1. Click, shift, click, keep. And then here we go, click, click, shift click, and click, and say discard. Perfect. There it is. Completely shelled part. Interesting. What's this one doing there? Hold on 1 second. This is interesting. You belong to there. Wrong layer. Okay, and let's turn on symmetry and let's take a look at the fruit of our hard work. Perfect. So now, for example, what can we continue doing? We could go back around those edges if we want to in alias, but of course if I am going to round this edge, I'm going to run into trouble here, so because there's not much space. This will be very easy to round. There's plenty of space everywhere. This area here, however, is also going to be maybe a tricky part. So this might be a good opportunity to only model and hard edge design. So we're only going to adjust all the surface we have here right now, and then we will do the final sharp edge rounding actually in Fusion. In Fusion is a little bit better at certain parts, specifically because it's a solid modeler. So my process probably will be, I have to maybe, and I should adjust, for example, those thicknesses of those parts, because as I mentioned before, if I want to round this edge, there won't be really much material to round, because this corner is being rounded, but also this corner. So right now I can utilize alias, for example, simply as the modeler to create all the main surfaces. I can use the profiles and the construction history to do quick alterations of my design. For example, I can turn on the control vertices, and the surface is trimmed. Yeah, that's true, but I could still go ahead and, for example, x-axis, bend this one slightly out. Now you see, play with this a little bit. Or maybe I only will do this actually with those points. Let's see if this works. So you have to be careful about the front part there because it's opening. So I think in this case I might have to pull those a little bit this way. So I can pull those out a little bit. Yeah, that's based on how I created all those trim curves. But you see here, imagining the rounded edges is secondary. That's a final touch-up. It doesn't really have anything to do with creating the proportion or the design idea, which is I can do, for example, right now by working on those surfaces, and nicely the construction history updates all that stuff for me. Okay, that's basically covering all the steps to create such a layered design like in Mitch's case.